This has been a long year. A year of uncertainty, struggle, pain. We've watched a virus take countless lives. People we knew, people we loved. Jobs have been lost. Businesses have shut down. And churches have been forced to close their doors. We've witnessed division on an unprecedented level. Cities filled with violence, streets filled with protesters. And we felt the sting of racism, the deep heartache of hate. There have been times where it's been difficult to see the hand of God. But even in the darkest of moments, He has been there, faithful, present, powerful. As a new year begins, we stand on a simple truth. Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They'll soar on wings as eagles. They'll run and not grow weary. They'll walk and not grow faint. We don't know what this new year will hold, but we know that it's held by a God whose mercies are new every morning. This is where we place our trust. This is the truth on which we stand. This is our hope for the new year.
All right, Zion, come on and give Him glory, Zion. We're in the house of praise tonight. We've come to lift His name high. You know what we come to do, guys? All 2020, we've been blessing His name, and all we're going to do is go higher in His name today, thinking about all the wonderful things He's done, the many ways that He's made. You ought to go ahead and clap your hands, because you know the blood still works. That's it, y'all. The blood still works.
The blood still works.
Come on, everybody. The blood still
The
works.
blood still works.
Come on, sing The blood still works.
The blood
You ought to be
still
clapping
works.
those hands at home. Come on, it will never.
It will never.
That's right. Lose its power.
Lose its power.
Come on, y'all. The blood still
The blood
works.
still works.
Come on, put those hands together and say, the blood
The
still
blood
works.
still works.
Come on, I want you to think about all He's
The
done.
blood still
The many
works.
times that He's forgiven you over and over again. You
The
can
blood
say,
still works.
it'll never lose its healing
The
power.
blood still works.
Come on, y'all, singing it will never. That's it, you got it.
Lose its power.
Come on and say the blood
The
still
blood
works.
still works.
Here we go, say, I know it works.
I know it works.
Because
Cause He raised me.
I know it
it
works.
works.
Because it saved me.
Cause it saved me.
I know it works. Because it healed me.
Cause it filled me.
I know it
I
works.
know it works.
Because it healed
Cause
me.
it healed me.
And now,
It will
it will never. That's right, y'all. I need somebody out there who has a testimony today to go ahead and let the world know that the blood will never lose its power.
I know it works.
Hey, because
Cause it raised me.
I know it
I
works.
know it works.
Because the same, because the same.
I know it
Oh,
works.
it was the blood. I know it was the blood. I know it was the blood for me. It will never. That's it, y'all.
Lose its
Ooh.
power.
Oh yeah, yeah. The blood still
Blood still
works.
works.
Come on, y'all. Put your hands together.
I know.
The blood still works.
The blood still works.
Come on, all the sopranos. I want all the sopranos singing. Singing, I know. That's right, tenors. Come on. Oh, yeah. Come on, altos, where you at? Say, I know. 'Cause he's been so good to you. Like he's been so good to me. The blood that never loses power. The healing blood. The blood that washed me clean. Say, it will never lose. Come on, the blood. Hey, hey, hey. Come on, y'all. Say, the blood, the blood. Oh, yeah. You ought to tell somebody right now. You ought to be thinking about all he's done for you, the many times he's forgiven you over and over again. His grace and mercy. By his grace and mercy, we have been redeemed. By his grace and mercy, we have been set free. I know it works. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I know it works. You reflecting on 2020 and the way he's brought you through. Hey, lose its power. Come on, we're going higher in Jesus, y'all. Say it will never. Come on and say the blood still works. Put those hands on it. Hey, come to bless his name. That's right, church family. Come on and give him glory for who he is. If you're ready to give him praise, won't you just shout, the Lord keeps making a way out of no way. He keeps on blessing me over and over and over again. Come on, right now I need you to go ahead and clap those hands. Go ahead, tell somebody at home to turn it up real quick, y'all. 2, 3, say. We're going to take this time right now to reflect on all he's done. Even the little things, even the valleys, the valleys, the valleys. When we go through the low valleys, the Lord always brings us up, right? Hey, so you ought to be celebrating right now. Here we go, y'all. Say, he keeps on blessing me. Over and over. Over and over. Come on, he keeps blessing me. That's it, y'all. Come on, he keeps on blessing me. He keeps on blessing me. Over and over and over. Hey, come on, won't you get your family in the room? Everybody's singing, he keeps on. Over and over. Hey, come on, y'all, that's right. He keeps on blessing me. Come on, even when you don't deserve it, the Lord keeps on making the way out of no way. Come on, y'all, let's break it down one time. Say, Lord, you've been. Hey. So I look to the hills from which cometh my help. Gotta tell it. Whoa, whoa. Say, I just can't keep it to myself. Come on, he keeps on blessing. Come on, I need the whole church rocking right now. Just like we in the sanctuary. Y'all know what it is. Come on, y'all, he keeps on blessing. Over and over and over. No matter what I've done, he keeps on redeeming. Come on, y'all, say, Mom. Blessed shall I be. Blessed shall I be. Hey, say, when you come. One time. Hey, yeah, the nations. Come on, everybody. He keeps on blessing me. Singing over and over and over. He keeps on. Blessing me. Over and over and over again. Hey, turn it up, y'all. Here we go, y'all. Say, blessed shall I be. Hey, I want you to claim it right now. Say, blessed shall I be. Sing it when you come. No matter what you're going through, the Lord is gonna make a way for you. Hey, come on now. Put those hands together, y'all. Hey! Come on, everybody. dare everybody hit the snake at home. Oh, we're going back. We're going to take it back a little bit, y'all. Hey, we just came to have a good time to celebrate the name of the Lord, thinking about all he's done and the many ways he's made. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. You say, he keeps on blessing me. That's it, y'all.
He keeps on blessing me.
What?
He keeps on blessing me.
He keep on. He keep on. He keeps on. He keeps on blessing. He keeps on blessing. Keep on. He keep on. You say it. You want to think about all he's done. Hey. Keep on. He keep on. Lord, I'm nothing without you. I can't move without you. Hey, I can't think without you. Can't speak without you. Lord, he keep on. Say, he keeps on blessing. Hey, he keeps on blessing. He keep on. He keep on. I want you to keep on praising him. Like can't nobody else tell your story, because you know they can't. Say, cause he keep on. He keep on. Come on and bless his name. All over this place. All over this world. We come to lift him high. We come to bless his name. Cause there's nobody greater. There's nobody greater. He keep on. He keep on. And say, he keeps on blessing me. Everybody go ahead and put those hands on it. It's a celebration, y'all. Come to give him the glory. That's right, that's right, that's right. We hit the stick. To the right, to the left, to the right, to the left, to the right. Keep on, y'all. We're going to celebrate tonight. Give him glory. Woo.
Amen. Thank you, Minister Miles, for leading us in worship. It is good to be with you tonight, my brothers and my sisters, to end 2020. I'm going to ask that you turn with me to the 8th chapter of the Gospel of St. Luke. The 8th chapter of the Gospel of St. Luke. The 8th chapter of the Gospel of St. Luke. And we're going to jump to the 22nd verse. These are the words that are recorded. It says, one day he and his disciples got in a boat. Let's cross the lake, he said, and off they went. It was smooth sailing, and he fell asleep. A terrific storm came up suddenly on the lake. Water poured in that they were about to capsize. They woke Jesus. Master, we're going to drown. Getting to his feet, he told the wind, silence, and the waves quiet down. They did it. The lake became smooth as glass. Then he said to his disciples, why can't you trust me? They were in absolute awe, staggering and stammering. Who is this anyway? He calls out to the winds and sea, and they do what he tells them. We're going to share for a few minutes from this sermon subject, where is your faith? The fishermen who were now following Jesus had been accustomed to functioning in extremely familiar territory. Most of their trade required them to fish in a very small geographical space where Capernaum was located. Their trade-related actions affirm the fact that most of us know we tend to get very comfortable in the places where we live our life. The things that are familiar, the same people, same routine, same expectations, same challenges. In fact, we stop fearing much when we stand on the ground of the familiar. The danger of that, of course, is that we also stunt our growth when we stay only in the area of the places that we know. What new did you learn about yourself? What new do you learn about yourself? What new discoveries are you introduced to? What challenges present themselves to stretch and stress you so that you might discover that you are not as fragile as you were last time, or help to show you that you are stronger than you think? Maybe that explains why Jesus in verse 22 of this chapter says abruptly to the disciples, let's go over to the other side. I've read enough scripture from the New Testament to know that whenever Jesus says, let us go anywhere, you can just know that while he is inviting you to change geographical space and perhaps emotional disposition, he is also inviting you to spiritually grow and mature. The disciples boarded a boat and began their trip across the sea. Jesus, the omniscient one, knows that there will be a lesson on the water while making this trip that the disciples could not back on the shore of familiar space. Storms often rose suddenly on the lake called the Sea of Galilee, and these fishermen had usually stayed closer to the Capernaum side. I'm going somewhere, and they are really unprepared for the storm that is about to hit them while out here on the water or out there on the water with Jesus. These storms would often rush down from Mount Hermon down through the Jordan Gorge upon the Sea of Galilee and would shake the lake with violent ferocity. And that is exactly what happens in this text. The disciples are rock full of fear and anxiety. They literally lose their wits about them and run to wake Jesus, suggesting that Jesus doesn't even care, sleeping while the storm is raging. Jesus calmly rises from the elevated stern, shifts the small cushion he was resting his head upon, pushes it to one side, all the while shaking slumber and sleep from his body, and he simply stands on the boat, commands the storm, stills the storm, and the storm obeys. The storm's immediate response to Jesus shocks the disciples until they look at each other in awe and begin to ask each other, who is this man? We've committed to following that even nature responds to his command. This is, of course, the miracle of this text, that Jesus speaks to the tempest while the tempest is raging and says, peace be still, and the storm silences. That's the miracle, hear me, that God knows that too many of us need to be reminded that Jesus is Lord over the storms. And I know that you know that God is the head of your life, but have you wondered how strong is your God? Have you ever wondered how big is your God as it relates to the raging storms of your life? And this miracle is given to us in the text to remind us tonight that we don't have a storm that Jesus can't calm externally or internally. Now, the issue is, how long will you have Jesus in your life before you tell him about how scared you are of the storm raging in your life? How long will you allow the water to rush over the boat and hope that the storm will pass before you ask Jesus to intervene? Because the miracle of this text, y'all, tonight is teaching us that you only last in your storms as long as it takes you to awaken to Christ's presence with you, to the presence of this storm and the honest impact that this storm is having on your life. Jesus, they say, don't you care that we are drowning? And of course, the answer is yes, I care, and that is why Jesus stands and stills the storm. It's great to be reminded that when clouds are in your life and they've started gathering and the sun hides your face, when the waters are arguing below you and what was stable in your life starts to get choppy and rocky, it is a great reminder that Jesus does have power over storms and that he can still it if you turn your storm over to him. But now, let's look at the text. The disciples didn't get in the boat and start off without Jesus. They didn't get in the boat and face the storm without Jesus. They didn't drag Jesus along knowing that a storm was going to rush them while they are trying to cross the lake. They're in the text instructed by Jesus to push off from the shore and to make their way to the other side. Jesus literally says to them in verse 22, let's go to the other side, which means he knew that they were going to encounter this storm while making their way to the other side. Pushing off from the storm was nothing to them. They were fishermen. They were accustomed to doing that. In fact, being in the boat was not scary because they were fishermen. They were used to fishing. What they were not used to do, watch this, was the distance they were going to travel before the storm hit. These fishermen knew about storms. They were fishermen. They'd been out on the water when occasional storms would start to rise, but they'd always been on the boat closer to the shore when the storms would hit. Jesus invites them in this particular situation to go farther, knowing that they're going to encounter a storm that will challenge them in ways that they've never been challenged or stretched before. Hear me, they are invited to go further with Jesus than they would normally go without him. I'm going somewhere. And at the invitation extended by Jesus, they find themselves out of the sphere of the familiar, and the storm hits them because they are further away from the familiar than they are used to. If they encountered a storm closer to the shore, anxiety would not have rocked them because they had assurance that they've been in storms before and could row their way back to forth from wherever distance close to Capernaum the boat was resting on the lake. But it is clear that in this particular situation, Jesus is taking them away from the familiar so that they can develop something that being immersed in the familiar would ever produce. I'm going somewhere. Traveling with Jesus introduces the disciples to storms that were more fierce than they'd ever experienced. Their response to the storms prompted Jesus to challenge them in the area of their faith and trust in God. That's why Jesus took them out there in the first place, because they needed faith and a trust that is a whole lot more than what could have been developed while on the boat in the familiar of 2019. He knew that they were headed for some challenges in 2020, that the calm, stay close to the shore life of Capernaum would not be sufficient to handle or teach. So he invited them to grow and stretch their faith. And notice that growing a faith means being introduced to a different level of storm and a different level of ferocity, and a removal from the space of your expertise or your intelligence or your know-how. They are pulled from where they're under control and they're forced to survive in a place where they are out of control, because Jesus wants to develop in them more faith. And the question Jesus asked them when the storm they are facing filled them with anxiety is this: where is your faith? The Message Bible says, don't you trust me yet? My point is this: if you're going to grow and go with Jesus, expect that growing in him, glowing with him, going with him is going to introduce you to the unfamiliar. There are going to be moments when you are anxiety-ridden. You will be introduced to a place of personal frustration where you feel out of control. And while all of this would love to stay grounded, all of us would love to stay grounded in the sphere of the familiar, growing in God is going to invite you, push you, pull you, force you to the other side of your interpretation of life. You want to grow? Then you're going to be pushed to the other side of your familiar responsibilities. You want to grow beyond 2020? Then you're going to have to deal with your familiar coping mechanisms. The other side of your familiar escape practices, the other side of your familiar responses or attitudes to changing situations. And we can be sure that while traveling with Jesus, there's some storms out there. Listen, there are some storms out there that we may have seen before, but you haven't seen them from that far out before. And if Jesus takes you that far out, he's going to get you to try to exercise your faith and grow some bigger faith muscles. You're not going to be able to grow big staying close to Capernaum shores. I know that 2020 has been hell on wheels, but I'm believing that we are better, that we will be better, that we've had to push away from the safe shore to go out to the other side. And I believe Jesus does this to the disciples because their faith is not right now able to handle a lot more than what is close to the shore. And it is easy to be a spiritual superstar in an environment where your superstardom is never challenged by adversity. Nobody leaves this year unscathed. All of us have had our boundaries pushed. Everybody has had to operate in the unfamiliar. I don't care who you are. I don't care how old you are. I don't care where you come from, which class is. You've had to make some adjustments. But hear me, when the disciples go further with Jesus' invitation, they discover that there are some storms that could surprise them. There are some storms that could rock them. There are some storms that can scare them, and that is what the text suggests happens. While they're out there, they are surprised at the anger of the storm, and they become uneasy about the storm. And you see it in verse 24. What is the repetitiveness of their desperate cry to Jesus? Master, Master. Then you hear the interpretation of their place upon the storm. We are perishing. Wow, they weren't quite perishing, but that's how you feel when you're out there in the familiar and water is coming on the boat. The boat is rocking back and forward. We're perishing. What is really happening is that they are further out than they normally are, and they want God to put them back where God had them. Come on, am I talking about your 2020? It felt like you were drowning. But God is simply saying, I had you further out than you normally are. It felt like you were tanking. But God is saying, I had you out further than you normally are. You're going to get back into the church. I'm going to make sure of it. But for a while, I just want to see, were you able to survive outside of it for a while? You just out a little further. Yeah, things aren't what they used to be on your job. You just out there a little further than you are. You're going to look back in 2021 and thank God for the testimony of 2020. But while you're in 2020, God is saying, where is your faith? They're out there. The storm's hitting. Water's coming in the boat. The boat is rocking back and forward. We're perishing, they're thinking. Listen, you aren't really perishing, but you feel like you're perishing when you're stuck in the unfamiliar. Your comfort level has been rocked. The storm is raising anxiety in your life. The storm is not any more fierce than it is when you're closer to the shore, but you feel like it because you are out here in the unfamiliar. And the point is this: if you're growing in God, don't you be naive. Your travel spiritually is going to bring you some blessings. Yeah, you're going to get some blessings. There are blessings while you travel with God. But in order to grow up and keep the travel going, you're going to have to be tested sometimes and challenged by storms that are unfamiliar. You're going to have to face having to answer some questions that Jesus asked his disciples, and God is asking it today. Where is your faith? And while you're excited about your spiritual growth and relationship with God, now that you are further from the familiar, out here where you never traveled, dealing with what you never dealt with, managing blessings that blow your mind, you know you need faith equal to the place you now occupy, the blessings you now enjoy, and your faith is being challenged by storms that will test your strength and tenacity that stretches developments to the next level to ensure you are developing proper theological interpretation of the crazy places that that life will land you. And I feel like we're being challenged tonight. I don't want you to know, I don't want to know if you're going to crumble. I'm out here with you today. This is what God is saying. I told you you're going to go to the other side. We're not out here for you to drown. We're out here for you to grow. And that's the question tonight. Where is your faith? Listen, I've heard so many people talk about the curse of 2020, how jacked up 2020 is. But there ought to be somebody in the house right now saying, I survived. And I know God ain't even finished with me yet. The truth is, I know there may be more in 2021 that came down the 2020 road. But guess what? At the end of the day, I'm better by it. I'm able to say I'm stronger because of it. I understand the importance of relationships now. I took church for granted, but next time I go up in there, I'm going to bust the walls wide open. I didn't appreciate certain things about life, but I'm better because of what I've gone through. Now, your comfort level has been challenged. Your money may be divided by responsibilities more than you can calculate the money coming in. The decisions you have to make are leap years away from the simple decisions you had to make just last year at this time. Last year, you were filling out the easy form for your taxes. Now 2020 got you itemizing and putting more time into it. Your relationships have you asking questions that you never asked before. Now you understand that some folk are more important than you allowed them to be, while other people aren't as important as you thought they were. That's an amen right there. Your emotions now are forcing you into places in your spirit and your soul that even have lit a torch for Jesus, and it still makes you feel like sometimes you're walking in the dark. And from this place, God is accepting, watch this, responsibility for you being in the storm. God says, I know you're in the storm. God says, I know where you are. I know you're struggling because it worked out like that. I know you're stressed out. It's my fault that you're feeling unsure unsure and uneasy about the decisions that are being forced upon your way to make and what direction you're traveling in. You're out there. I know it's been orchestrated because I needed you to have an excursion to an unfamiliar place, because it was one thing for you to answer affirmatively when I asked, do you trust me? It's easy to say yes while you're standing on the shore, but when you're way out there where there's no standing ground and you're nervous facing decisions because you're full of anxiety and you're feeling like you're out of control, Jesus sent me to ask somebody tonight. I don't want to know if you're going to bless my name when you got it or you're all good. I want to know, how will you respond when you don't have it? How will you give praise when you're in the midst of hell and not in the midst of a honeymoon? Where will you stand when you're standing all by yourself? I'm not interested to see if you're on solid ground where you are, but where will you be when the boat is rocking back and forth with 2020 stuck on the side of it? You don't trust me yet? God's simply saying, where's your faith? Hear me. We feed our spiritual growth with faith. But here's something else. Faith exercises on storms. Wherever God is taking us, we need faith to absorb the storms of that growth place. We need faith to go, but this text is teaching us that we need faith to exist there as well. There is a faith that makes us launch from the shore, but there's some of us who only have faith to launch, but not faith to stick. It's easy to pull off from the shore when Jesus says, let's go to the other side, because we pulled off before. The hard part is leaning on him when the storm begins to hit without regretting that we ever launched in the first place. It's what happened to the Israelites when they got out of Egypt. They were singing and whistling and skipping on the way out of Egypt until they get down to the banks of the Red Sea and the storm hits. Not literally, but figuratively. Pharaoh has sent the chariots, and they have this expansive body of water in front of them, and they start asking, were there not enough graves in Egypt that you brought us out here into the wilderness to die? They have faith to launch, but they didn't have faith enough to lean on God. And I'm trying to teach somebody tonight, if we have faith enough to get up out of the bed and trust God to order our steps, then you have to have faith enough that when God is ordering your steps and your steps get shaky, that you are underneath the everlasting arms of a God that will not let you fall. If you're going with Jesus, you're going to ride with him through some dark and stormy places. And I wish I could report differently today. Don't you let people fool you. 2020 should have taught you that. If you're going to accept the invitation, it doesn't mean that you're going to have a get out of storm free card. In fact, you haven't seen some storms until you really hooked up with God. But the promise is, if God invited you, God will keep you from falling. God help me, that's your testimony. I'm still standing. That ought to be lighting up the chat right now. God allows it though. And God could prevent it sometimes, because God, listen, wants you to see where your faith is relative to where it was in the last storm. This is the question of relevancy. You can't develop this faith staying in the same spot all the time. You don't develop this kind of faith just fishing in the familiar parts of the lake close to shore. There's a story about 3 girls and their father every night will have them praying on the edge of their bed. One night, the father noticed that his daughter, who was in the middle, didn't pray. And he said, baby, are you scared to pray tonight? She says, no, Dad, I don't need to pray because I'm in the middle. And she was suggesting that her sisters have to pray because they were sleeping on the edge of the bed and they were praying from the outside. And she didn't have to worry because she was in the middle. She felt comfortable enough in the posture of the middle and thought she only needed to pray if it was her time to sleep on the edge. And I understand that from the young lady. And that explains why many of us, God has to push to the edge because we keep operating with a sleep in the middle disposition like you can afford to. So God says, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you edge duty this year so I can keep you spiritually connected to me. If you only pray when storms are hitting, then I'll keep a storm hitting to keep you praying. And this is why God presses to grow where faith takes us to a place where there will be storms. And I can tell when God is telling me that I've been at a place or a level too long. The sun starts to fade. Things start to get flat. Storms start to come. God starts to push me spiritually. It's time to move to another level because God sends a storm to push things sometimes. And the storm pushes me to go to God. The storm will have me praying more. Come on, am I talking your testimony? Seeking God more. Realizing that it ain't about me. Worshiping God more. Being more passionate and deeper in my study. God sends storms, and sometimes it keeps me from going outside without spending some quality time with God. And the storms force me down on my knees, force me on my face. Storms cause me to increase my relationship with God in order to handle the storms that I face. The storms help y'all to grow. God is trying to tell us, if we thought we were worshiping in 2019 and that was the highest moment of our worship, I'm going to get your faith muscles stronger into a place where your worship is about to blow your mind. It's going to show itself to those around you. Listen, those of you who've been going through it this year, know that you don't give God the same praise this year that you gave God last year, that you give God out here in the midst of where you're going, because the storm will jack you up enough that you've got to give God the best that you've got. So this question comes to us tonight, and I ask again, where's your faith? Don't you trust God? Growth demands that we apply faith to the uneasy in our lives. We all have it, especially living in this time, in this culture, in this particular moment. This year's been crazy. You're going to have to reflect back on it. Some of us have been under such mental anguish, such turmoil. We've been going through it. We don't even realize what this year has done to us emotionally. Not only have we been having to adjust with minimizing contact with other people, we've had to readjust what we did to entertain ourselves. Most folk haven't been able to take vacations. Many people haven't even seen their co-workers in months. Folk haven't been able to go and hang out with their parents or with their closest friends. People have had to cancel trips to other states and then decide that if they did go, they had to quarantine when they got back. Life has been crazy. And I know COVID is enough to drive us crazy, but we still went through the crazy cycle of a presidential election. Even now, while I'm preaching this sermon on December the 31st, 2020, the president still has not said, I've taken an L. This has been a crazy year, but I'm telling you, in the midst of all of that, God will still show God's self. And Jesus lets storms sometime hit our lives so that we can develop faith necessary to address our uneasiness. When I first started out, I had anxiety around things that are minute as it relates to the responsibility that I've got now. When I was a kid, the stuff that used to stress me out ain't the same stuff that stresses me out right now. When I first started out, it was my car payment or some clothes that I wanted. Then it was paying for my first home, which was my townhouse. I was stressed writing checks, having to make sure I can cover them. That if I wrote them, I had to make sure that by the time it hit the bank, I had to have some money. Now, as I've grown, my monthly expenses then are my weekly expenses now. And God had to send some storms to stretch and grow my faith Because if God didn't, I wouldn't be able to handle the grown man responsibilities I carry on many different fronts right now. Every now and then, I've got to thank God for maturity. Because Tyrone from 5 years ago, Tyrone from 10 years ago, Tyrone from 1 year ago would not handle what he's handling right now with the same level of maturity. And I'm talking to somebody today. Some of us used to freak out over one bill you had to pay. And look today at all you are responsible for. The little job responsibilities you had years ago versus the managerial responsibilities you have right now. God sends these moments while we're traveling with God to grow us in our faith and to handle the enormity of some things that you can't see yet that is on the other side of the lake. And God knows the faith you have in Capernaum is not the faith you're going to need after you've ascended and they put you in the midst of a riot or crucify you or stick stakes in your hand and your feet. It's hard to handle house payment with rent expectations. God is asking us, while God is pushing us out there to grow, don't give up. Don't drown. Don't overturn the boat. Don't try to swim back to shore. If I was God to you before, I will be God to you when we get to the other side. If I'm God to you when the clouds have come and the water is raging and the boat is rocking, I'll be God to you while you're looking for a job. Won't I be God to you even if you don't find one right now? Because I've done it before. If I was God to you while you were single, I'll be God to you while you're married. I will be God to you in between. And we've got to trust that if God is God, if God is before us, then who in the world can be against us? Master, don't you even care that we are perishing? Don't you care that we are going to perish? And Jesus raises the question, where is your faith? This storm is not going to kill you. And the fact that you think it is shows you where your faith is. The fact that you lost your job and you're even contemplating hurting yourself, or that life is over, shows you where your faith is. The fact that it fell all apart and you think that means that it will be forever apart shows you where your faith is. Don't ask, do I care if you're perishing, Jesus said. Instead, ask, what growth is in the storm that you want me to handle? And I wish we could encourage each other with this simple fact as we close out this year. What we are going through is not going to kill us. God, help me in 2020. If I'm still here, I'm still standing, I'm still surviving, I am a testimony. If 2020 ain't killed me, then God is up to something. The storm we are facing right now will not, did not, cannot, is not going to kill me. Hear me tonight. If I can stand where I'm standing right now, knowing the storm is not going to kill me, I can go back out into the storm and I can decide that I'm going to row my boat a little while longer. Let me start making preparations for my life on the other side of the lake. How can I trust God more in this? How can I believe God more while I'm walking through this? Hear me tonight. What I've already survived is enough testimony to get me over the crack in my life. In 2020, I've survived enough storms that I thought would have taken me out, but yet I'm still here. It got dark for a minute, but the morning kept on coming and the sun kept on rising. Water rose over the tip of the boat. The tempest was raging. We swallowed up some seawater, but not enough to take me out or take me down. And now that I'm out here on the rough sea again, I've got to remember from where God has brought me. God has been good to me in the storm before, so let God be good to us in the storm now. This storm won't kill us. I heard a story about some ants. Man saw an ant army carrying sticks to build up their little ant colony. One ant was burdened down by the stick he was carrying. He was carrying his burden, trying to keep pace with the rest of the ants, carrying his burden. His stick, his little piece was a little bigger. He was going slower, dragging. It was draining his energy. He was carrying what was a burden, trying to keep pace with everybody else. Then the whole ant army came to a crack in the road. All the other ants stretched over the crack. Some made it, some didn't. But this ant was so burdened by what he was carrying, when he got to the crack, he couldn't just stretch out. So he dropped his burden and walked on his burden to the other side, picked his burden up, and kept on walking. I'm done. Listen, you will have to go through another storm, and it's going to be a burden. So why don't you take the burden and drop it over the cracks in your life and make travel over your storms? Use your storm in order to make progress, since you've got to deal with it anyway. Hear me tonight. Carry your burden till you can't carry it anymore. And when you can't carry it anymore, lay your burden down at the foot of Jesus and cross from where you are into God's presence. And when you get on the other side, you can take your burden to the Lord and leave it there. This storm wasn't meant to kill us. It was meant to make us stronger. In 2021, I'll be stronger than I was in 2020. In 2021, I'll have a stronger testimony than I ended the year with in 2019 going into 20. In 2021, my praise will be better. My worship will be heightened. Yes, I've got a testimony. I've survived another storm. God has been my shelter and my refuge. In 2020, God's been my protector, my provider, my peace in the midst of a storm. In the storm with God, I've learned that I won't bend, I won't buckle, I won't break, I won't give up. I'm going to carry my burden with me into 2021. Why don't you go ahead and hug yourself and preach to yourself? I will trust in the Lord with all my heart. I will lean not to my own understanding. I will in all of my ways acknowledge God, and God shall direct my path. They that wait upon the Lord, encourage yourself. They shall renew their strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. The water will not overtake me. The fire will not consume me, because God will give us angels and allow those angels to take charge over us. Preach to yourself. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When my enemies came upon me to eat of my flesh, they stumbled and fell. Though a host shall encamp around me, my heart shall not fear. Though a war shall arise around me, in this I will be confident. This one thing have I desired of the Lord, that I will seek after, that I might dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And is in the time of trouble that God shall hide me in the secret of God's tabernacle. Come on, do I have any storm survivors that are up with me right now who can say in 2020, it doesn't matter what I've been through in 2020, it doesn't make a difference what was going on in 2021, I'm still gonna be standing. The devil tried to take me down, but I'm here right now. Tried to make me give up, but I'm here right now. And if it did not break me in 20, it ain't gonna break me in 21. I'm claiming peace be still. I'm claiming that the waves go to sleep. I'm believing that the waters have to obey the master's voice. And I will meet y'all on the other side. How long? I will meet you when the water stops rising, when the boat stops rocking, when the thunder stops rolling, because God is with me. And I don't know who I'm talking to, but I'm gonna meet you on the other side. I don't know who I'm talking to, but I'm on my way to the other side. And I'm telling you, somebody ought to say, I made it. That's my praise in advance. 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 20 tried to kill me, but I made it. 20 tried to take me out, but I made it. 20 tried to knock me down, but I made it. Here's my praise in advance. And if that's you, you ought to thank God for who God is. I don't know if you're saved. So real quickly, I offer you this opportunity. If you don't know God, then take it. It's me. I need to be saved. Real quickly in the chat, direct message. Let us know. I want to end 2020 saved. I want to end 2020 saved. I want to end 2020 saved. And if that is you, just hit us up. Let us know. Send a direct message. Just put it in the chat. We'll catch it. We'll get with you. If you don't want to do it that way, then call me 804-648-7511 or email me, pastor@smzbc.org. We're going to end this just like we would if we were together on watch night, whether we were here at 6 Mount Zion or whether we were at Second Baptist. One of our favorite invitation songs is Moving Forward by Israel Halton. And I want you to claim that as your testimony going into 2021. I'm not moving back. I'm moving forward. I'm here to declare my past is over. All things are made new. Surrendered my life in Christ. I'm moving forward. I'm moving forward. Listen, I've already shared that this has been a difficult year. And I'm not one of those people who believe in hocus pocus, that as you cross over into 2021, that everything that was happening in 2020 won't carry over. COVID ain't going nowhere. We still gonna have to wash our hands. We're still gonna have to wear a mask. We're still gonna have to socially distance. We still may be working virtually, and even for the first few months of the year, we may stay worshiping virtually. But I'm believing that God is powerful enough. God is powerful enough that the storm that we've been in has made us stronger. And so we won't break apart like we did earlier. And some of us, our faith was shaky, was rocky. We were jacked up. We're stronger now. And I'm not sure if things are going to return ever like they used to be. But what I do know is that wherever God takes us, we're strong enough to handle it. Listen, if you're in the house with somebody and you want to grab somebody's hand or wherever you are, I don't know if you're alone or if you're with somebody, whatever you're doing, I'm just going to simply ask that you bow your head with me. And I want you to join us for prayer. Dear God, we thank you. I mean, seriously, we thank you. This year has humbled us. This year has pushed us into unfamiliar places. This year has shook us. This year has shocked us. For some of us, we've gone through the trauma of losing family members. For some of us, God, we've had to experience the anxiety, the physical anguish of having COVID, or knowing somebody close to us that has had it. God, the truth is, some way, shape, or form, this year has changed us. God, we miss fellowshipping together. We miss worshiping together. We miss being able to go on trips, go to the movies, hang out with friends. We miss being able to go sit with our parents and grandparents. We miss being able to go out in public without a mask on. But God, even through all of that, we've survived. Some of us, God, their testimony doesn't even match my prayer. They saying, Rev, if you only knew what I've been through this week, what I've been through this year. And God, I don't know, but for everybody who's praying with us, That's the beauty of you. Holy Spirit knows us. So God, I'm declaring right now in 2021, as we move into it, that we develop a spirit of moving forward. We can't change yesterday. We can learn from it. We can't make anything shift, but we can learn from it. We can't bring back anybody we lost, but we can learn from it. We don't know what 2021 holds, but we can hold on to our faith. And I'm believing, God, that our faith ought to be strong enough because you've shown yourself evident. We struggled, but yet we still had food on our table. We struggled, yet we had clothes on our back. We struggled, yet we've had somebody to talk to us and journey with us along the way. We struggled, but we still here. And thank you for that. God, I'm walking into freshness and anointing and newness in 2021. You do all things new. That's what you do. We're moving forward. 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 We're forgetting those things that are behind it. We're moving forward. We're not letting the past hold us. We're pressing toward the mark. We're moving forward. Thank you for forward. Thank you for forward. Thank you for what is in front of us and not what's behind us. Thank you for what is to come, not what came. Thank you. And I'm believing that you're going to join with me wherever you are. Households all across this region. People listening, watching from out of state. Join me. Let's say amen together and let's claim what God is doing. Amen. Happy New Year, y'all. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Virtual hug, elbows, all that good stuff. I miss you. And I'm claiming this to be a great year for us. Walk in it. Move forward. Move forward. Move forward. Catch us on Sunday, 10:45. The same way you're looking at it now, you can catch us on Sunday. We'll see you then. God bless you. I'm looking forward to an incredible 2021 with you, my 6 Mount Zion Baptist Church family. Love y'all. Good night. Get some rest.